Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. If this is your first time here, my name is Julia. Thanks so much for being here. Today, I've just been getting some stuff done around the kitchen. I have just been trying to get things in order, do things that need to be done. So I'll take you along. I had some bell peppers that were getting a little soft. We had a dinner planned last week that we just didn't get around to. So instead of letting those bell peppers go to waste, I wanted to get them chopped up and frozen. And we did our grocery shop for the week this morning, and we're gonna need some green bell pepper. So knowing that I was already going to be freezing the other bell peppers that I had, I decided to get a 3-pack of bell peppers from Aldi because that is the best price around me. So I kept one of those out fresh and I chopped 2 of the green ones that I just bought. So here you can see I have all my beautiful multicolored peppers, and I just put down a piece of parchment paper on a baking sheet, and I'm gonna pop those in the freezer just to flash freeze them. And once they're all frozen, I'll transfer them to Ziploc baggies to store in the freezer. I'll probably separate the green from the red, orange, and yellow, but now I have prepped cut peppers so that I can add them to any recipes, or saute them for pizza topping, whatever it might be, put them in quesadillas. So I have that easily accessible, and now I don't have to worry about buying the produce and not using it and it going bad in my produce basket, because that is almost what happened. After I did that, I just wanted to get the kitchen a little bit cleaned up. My husband had baked some chicken earlier today, and we just had some dishes in the sink that needed to get done. Some sippy cups from daycare for my son, as well as just some other items that had to get washed. So I made sure that I got all of that cleaned up, got dishes set in the drying rack so that they can be put away later. And while I was at it, I figured both of the soaps were low, so I have refills for both of those. We still have this, it's like Dapple brand, I think, bottle soap. We don't need this anymore, so this was really helpful when we were putting breast milk in bottles for my son. He has not had breast milk in a bottle in quite some time, so we don't really need the extra cleaning power that this provides. I also like that it's non-scented, just because, I don't know, his bottles and cups kind of have the ability to absorb some smell, so it was just nice to have, but by no means is it necessary. Somebody gifted it to us when I was pregnant, so here you can see that I use up the rest of the refill bottle, and once that's gone, we're not gonna repurchase it. It served us well, but we definitely don't need it anymore. We'll stick with our regular Dawn dish soap for now. Now that that is all done, the kitchen is a little bit cleaner. It still could use a good wipe down. The stove hasn't been wiped down in a while. The counter next to the fridge over there, don't get close, okay? You don't wanna see what it looks like, but we'll get to it eventually. Right now is not that moment. I haven't made anything dessert-y in a while, and I kind of have a hankering for some nice homemade dessert. I was thinking this morning I haven't made a fruit pie all season, all year, so I got some ingredients to make a blueberry pie. So I think I'm gonna be doing that. The blueberries honestly didn't look great at the grocery store, which was a little disappointing because we've been eating some really delicious blueberries, and I was like, oh, that'll be perfect. I think it's still gonna taste great once we get it baked up with a whole lot of sugar and some lemon and all that, but I guess we'll find out. I can link the recipe I'm using down below. I have never made this recipe before, but it has really good reviews. The only thing that I'm planning on doing differently is I won't be using the pie crust recipe that this recipe calls for. I'm going to make my own using the recipe from Becky at the Acre Homestead / her website, Scratch Pantry, if I'm remembering correctly. I've made hers before. It's delicious, comes together very easily. If you've never made homemade pie crust, I really recommend it. It's so, so good. There's nothing wrong with the store-bought kind. That's actually when you make it homemade, it just elevates your pie so much. So if you have the opportunity to make it, I highly suggest you do. And I will link the recipe for Becky's pie crust down in the description as well. So I think that's what I'm gonna get started on right now. I'll make that dough and put it in the fridge. And then maybe I'll make the whole pie. I don't know, I'm feeling kind of tired right now. But I feel like if I don't make it now, I'm not gonna make it, and it takes like an hour to bake, and the day is dragging on. So I think I will probably get the whole thing done. This recipe calls for a food processor, which I do not own, but that's not a problem. I've made it before, and you just do it by hand. It takes a little bit longer, but the end result is just as good. So if you have a food processor, that's great. If you don't worry about it. It just takes a little more elbow grease. The first thing I'm gonna do is put some water in the freezer just to chill. The recipe calls for ice water. I don't have ice in my house, so instead of actually using ice water, I'm just gonna get some water ice cold, and I don't have to worry about this freezing. It's not gonna be in there long enough for that to happen. And the reason why you want to use ice water to make this is because you want your butter to stay as cold as possible. That's what helps give you that flaky pie crust. So when the butter melts, it creates these delicious flaky layers in your crust. If your butter is warm, it might start melting before it gets baking, and then the butter will just melt out. In my bowl, I'm gonna mix together 2.5 cups of all-purpose flour, with that, I'm gonna add a teaspoon of salt. I'm just gonna eyeball that, as well as 2 tablespoons of sugar. I'm gonna use a fork just to get those all mixed. Now, my butter, I just pulled out of the freezer, so it's actually still frozen, but that's okay because I'm gonna cut it into pretty small cubes, and the smaller it is, the more surface area there is, and so it will soften up enough for us to accomplish what we're trying to do. And again, this does take a little bit more elbow grease without a food processor, so it'll take me a little while longer. Anyway, giving us a little bit more time for this to not be super frozen. Because this is frozen, it's not cutting into perfect squares, but that really doesn't matter. So I'm getting it cut into small pieces, little fragments. I'm adding my butter straight into my flour mixture. And now this is where it's gonna take a little more manual labor. What I'm gonna do is just work my flour. So as I'm getting all the flour pieces coated, I'm also just giving them a little bit of a smush to get more flour incorporated. This might actually be a little challenging for me today because for some reason, a couple of my fingers have been kind of sore, almost feeling like I jammed them. Which is a little weird, but I think I know why. I had a big work event this week, which involved a lot of manual labor. So I have a feeling that I just overworked a few of my fingers during that event. All right, this is what my flour mixture looks like now. So I don't have any super big clumps of butter anymore. Everything is on the smaller side, which is perfect. So now I pulled my water out of the freezer, and I'm just gonna add this a little bit at a time to get my dough to form. I am gonna use my hands. It is gonna be a little messy. Again, it would be nice to use a food processor for this, but I don't have one. So this is how it's gonna go. I've turned it out onto my counter. It is still quite dry, so I'm just gonna wet my hands instead of adding more water like directly to the mixture. I'm just gonna use some wet hands to try to work in the rest of this crumbly part. When you make a crust and you want it to be flaky, you don't want to work your dough that much, because when you work your dough, it helps gluten develop, and we don't really want a glutinous bread. We want a flaky dough. I'm gonna divide this approximately in half. And I'm gonna just flatten these into discs, sort of just low, flat rounds. Get them wrapped in plastic wrap and pop them in the fridge just to continue to stay cool until I'm ready to roll them out and use them. My dough is wrapped. I'm gonna get these in the fridge to stay nice and cool until we're ready to bake. All right, I have been letting the dough chill for a bit, so what I'm gonna do now is roll out my pie crust, and once that's rolled out, at least the bottom, I think I'll just roll out the bottom first, then I will get my filling mixed up, and then we'll get everything rolling. All right, here is one of my pie crust discs, and I'm just gonna get it nice and covered in flour. And then make sure we roll it out evenly so it's nice and round. That's why I shaped it into a disc before I put it in the fridge, because, you know, as dough gets cold, it tends to sort of crack around the edges when you roll it out. So getting it in a circle to begin with is just gonna help get the shape that we're looking for, which is a circle. A little flip. I think the recipe calls for this bottom crust to be about 13 inches in diameter. I'm not gonna measure it, but I'll use my judgment to aim for a little bit bigger than a foot. All right, that is about the size I'm looking for. So I will transfer into my baking dish. Now I'm gonna pop this back in the fridge just while we get the rest of the pie prepped. All right, I've got my big mixing bowl, 6 cups of blueberries. I already went through these and picked out any stems or any berries that just did not look their best. That one feels very squishy and soft. To this bowl, I'm gonna add 2 tablespoons of fresh squeezed lemon juice, which is just a little bit less than I squeezed. I see another stem, I'm gonna get that out. A 1/2 cup of granulated sugar. I'm gonna zest some lemon directly in so I don't have to dirty another plate. The recipe calls for 2 tablespoons. If I'm being honest, I don't have the energy for that. 2 tablespoons is a lot of lemon zest. I'm just gonna use what I have available on this half a lemon. The recipe calls for 4.5 tablespoons of flour. 4 tablespoons is 1/4 cup, so I'm just gonna do a little bit more than 1/4 cup. And a teaspoon of cinnamon, which I'm also not gonna measure. That is close enough. I'm gonna mix all this together with a wooden spoon. This is my favorite wooden spoon. Everybody has a favorite, don't they? Now, I'm gonna dump this into my pie dish. Our goal is to have it a little bit heaping in the middle. So I'm just gonna spread my blueberries around, just like that. Oop, I found a lemon seed. And now I'm gonna roll out my second pie crust, but we're actually gonna make a lattice. That's kind of that crisscross style a lot of fruit pies use. So after I get this rolled out, I'll use my pizza cutter just to slice it into strips. You don't have to use a pizza cutter, you can use a knife. But I have a pizza cutter and that will make it simple for sure. I'm not an expert at this lattice, but once you understand the general pattern, it's not that hard to execute. Get you closer in here so you can see how I'm doing it. I started by laying all of the lattice in one direction down. And now I'll switch. And just weave in and out until the whole pie is covered. I'm gonna rip off some of this excess on the edges, and then I'm gonna fold my edges in. Is it gonna be the most beautiful crust you've ever seen? Nope. And there we have it. It's not 100% perfect, but I'd say that's pretty darn cute. The very last thing that I'll do before I put this in the oven is to add a little bit of egg wash right to the crust, and that'll just help it get nice and golden brown. If this is your first video of mine you're seeing, you won't know that my son has an egg allergy, so he will not be able to partake in this. but he's just a toddler and he will not know the difference. As a matter of fact, I wouldn't say he's picky, but like he's young enough that he's wary of new foods. He's had blueberries before. He's also not the biggest fan of blueberries, so we have plenty of other things for him. To be honest, most nights after dinner, he has, his dessert is like a little mixture of yogurt and like a little bit of fruit pouch mixed in just for some extra flavor and sweetness, and he loves that. I'm gonna pop this into the oven. I do have a tray underneath it just in case things get a little juicy, but this has to bake for 50 to 60 minutes. Now I'm gonna get this mess cleaned up and I'll make sure that I show you our finished product when it's all done. Well, I'm sorry to say I was right about the blueberries. They just weren't that good. So yeah, this pie was not my best pie, but I don't think it was because of the recipe. I really just think the blueberries were not very sweet, and it's not even like they were sour. They just, I don't know, they just didn't taste great. So a little bit of a bummer, but sometimes that's the way it goes. Not everything you make is gonna be the best thing you've ever made. Anyway, thank you so much for hanging out with me today. I'm so glad that you're here. If you like this video, please consider giving it a thumbs up. It really helps my channel grow and reach new people. And subscribe if you haven't already done so. Hope to see you in the next one. Bye.